It was a quiet evening in the heart of an ordinary neighborhood, where the glow of porch lights lined the streets and the hum of cicadas filled the air. Angela, a nurse known for her compassion and tireless work, was unwinding from a long day. Her only company on this walk was Milo, her ever-watchful German shepherd, a dog whose past held stories of service and sacrifice. The two were inseparable, and for Angela, Milo was more than just a pet. He was family. The air carried the faint scent of summer, and the world seemed at peace, but peace can often be deceiving. Angela, lost in her thoughts, let the rhythm of her footsteps carry her along the familiar path she had walked so many times before. She greeted neighbors in passing, their smiles a comforting reminder of the community she called home. Ahead, near a dimly lit corner, shadows began to shift. A group of figures emerged from the darkness, their movements deliberate, their focus unmistakable. They didn't belong here, not in this place of safety and routine. Angela slowed her pace, her grip tightening on Milo's leash. Instinct told her something wasn't right, and Milo seemed to sense it too, his ears perked, his stance alert. What unfolded next would not only test Angela's resolve, but reveal the extraordinary bond between a woman and her protector. This night, though filled with fear and uncertainty, would become a story of courage, loyalty, and the strength that lies in unexpected places. Stay tuned for as the story unfolds. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell for more daily stories. Share where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Angela had always been the kind of person who gave more than she took. As a nurse, her days were spent tending to others, soothing fears, mending wounds, and offering hope in the face of despair. To her neighbors, she was a quiet but steady presence, the type of person who waved at strangers and brought groceries to those in need. Her resilience had been tested before, and she wore it with quiet strength, never asking for recognition or praise. Yet tonight, under the faint glow of streetlights, her world teetered on the edge of a threat she had never prepared for. Beside her was Milo, her steadfast companion, walking at her side with the discipline and grace of a soldier. He was no ordinary dog. Milo's life before Angela had been one of service and sacrifice. A military veteran, he had spent years in high-stakes environments, trained to protect and defend with precision. His scars, both visible and invisible, were reminders of a past filled with challenges. When Angela adopted him, she gave him a home filled with warmth and care, and in return he gave her his loyalty, his instincts, and his protection. To anyone who met Milo, he was a hero. To Angela, he was family. But loyalty and training had their limits. Milo was still a dog, and Angela was just one woman walking along an empty suburban road. Neither of them knew the people who now moved closer, their faces obscured by shadows. They were strangers to her, a group of four, each step they took deliberate, their laughter sharp and mocking. They didn't look lost, and they didn't seem like passers-by. In this community, Angela had heard whispers about them before. A gang, small but vicious, who thrived on intimidation and sought power through fear. Their actions weren't random. They chose their targets carefully. Women walking alone, the elderly, and anyone who seemed unlikely to fight back. Angela, with her quiet demeanor and peaceful routines, fit their profile perfectly. And for them, the fact that she was black wasn't irrelevant. It was part of what made her a target. Angela could feel the weight of their presence now. She didn't know their names or their stories, but she didn't need to. She could see it in the way they moved, the way their voices echoed in the night. These were people who thrived on control. They weren't here to ask questions or make conversation. Milo, too, was watching. His posture had shifted, his tail still, his muscles tensed. Years of training had taught him how to read threats long before they materialized fully. He stood closer to Angela now, his eyes scanning every movement, every sound. To him, this wasn't a walk anymore. It was a mission, one he hadn't chosen but was prepared for nonetheless. Angela tightened her grip on his leash, her thoughts racing. She didn't want to panic. Panic led to mistakes. Instead, she focused on what she could control, the calm in her voice, the steadiness of her steps. She knew Milo could sense her fear, But she also knew he would follow her lead. She needed to think clearly, to stay composed. The gang, meanwhile, had no intention of stopping. They fanned out as they walked, their voices rising in volume, their laughter taking on an edge that made Angela's stomach tighten. One of them called out, his words carrying across the empty street. "Where you headed, lady? Out here all alone?" It wasn't a question. It was an announcement, a claim to the space they now occupied, a warning of what they intended to do. Another voice followed, mocking and taunting. They weren't rushing. They had no need to. In their eyes, they had already won. Angela didn't respond. She couldn't afford to. She kept walking, her pace steady, but her heart racing. She didn't know what they wanted, her belongings, her dignity, her safety, but she knew she couldn't let them take any of it without a fight. And she knew she wasn't alone. Milo, beside her, let out a low growl, almost imperceptible but enough to make Angela glance down at him. His ears were back, his gaze fixed. She knew that look. She had seen it once before, when they passed a stray dog that had barked too aggressively. It was the look of a protector, of a dog ready to act. But Milo wasn't just any dog, and Angela wasn't just any woman. Tonight, they would prove that even in the face of fear, courage could rise, and loyalty could turn the tides of a seemingly inevitable outcome. Angela's steps slowed as the group closed in, their voices louder now, filling the empty street with taunts and insults. They had formed a loose circle around her, cutting off the path she had taken so many times without a second thought. Milo stood by her side, his head low, his eyes locked on the strangers. His every muscle seemed coiled, ready to respond to Angela's smallest cue. The air felt heavier with each passing second, as though the quiet suburban evening had transformed into something far less certain. "Hey, lady," one of them called out, his voice sharp and mocking. "You lost? Or maybe you just don't belong around here." The words weren't meant to be friendly. They carried the weight of judgment, of intention. Another voice joined in, rough and aggressive. "You got something for us? Maybe we'll let you go if you're lucky." Angela's heart was pounding, but she didn't let it show. Fear was natural, but panic would only make things worse. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the group quickly. There were 4 of them, all men, each standing just close enough to trap her, but far enough to toy with her first. She didn't recognize any of them, but their posture, their smirks, their tone, it was all too familiar. They were in control, or so they believed. One of them stepped closer, his face illuminated briefly by the glow of a streetlight. He was tall, his expression cold, his eyes filled with something Angela didn't want to name. He gestured toward her purse, his voice dripping with mockery. "Let's not make this hard, all right? Just hand it over, and maybe that dog of yours won't have to learn a lesson." Angela froze for a moment, her grip on Milo's leash tightening. She could feel his tension through the leash, his readiness to protect her. But she also knew what Milo was capable of, and she didn't want things to escalate if she could help it. She needed to stay calm, to buy herself time. Slowly she reached for her purse, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I don't want any trouble," she said softly, holding out the bag. "Just take it and let me go." The gang laughed, the sound harsh and cruel. One of them grabbed the purse from her hand, rifling through it without hesitation. Another man leaned closer, his smirk widening. "You think it's that easy? You think we're done here?" Angela didn't respond. She couldn't. Every instinct told her to keep her movements measured, her words few. Milo let out another low growl, his stance unwavering. The sound caught the attention of the man closest to her, who sneered at the dog. "What's your mutt gonna do, huh? You think he's gonna scare us?" The tension in the air grew thicker as the group's confidence grew. Angela's mind raced, weighing her options. She couldn't run. They had her surrounded. She couldn't fight, not without Milo. And she didn't know how far they were willing to take this. She only knew one thing for certain. Milo was watching, waiting, and he wouldn't wait much longer. The man holding her purse tossed it to the ground with a scoff. "Nothing good in there anyway," he muttered. Then, turning back to Angela, he added with a grin, "What else you got for us? Maybe we take the dog, too." Angela felt a chill run through her. She stepped closer to Milo instinctively, her hand brushing against his fur. It was a small movement, but it was enough for Milo to pick up on her unease. His growl grew louder, his posture shifting from alert to defensive. The group noticed, their taunts faltering for the first time. "What's with the dog?" one of them asked, his bravado slipping slightly. The leader of the group waved him off, his smirk unfazed. "It's just a dog," he said dismissively. "Don't let it scare you." But Milo wasn't just a dog, and Angela wasn't just a victim. This wasn't going to go the way the gang expected. The gang's hesitation grew. With every second, Milo stood his ground. The leader, now visibly flustered, glanced at his companions, silently seeking support. But their courage was fading, their faces betraying a nervous uncertainty. This wasn't how they operated. They thrived on fear, on overpowering those who couldn't fight back. Yet here they were, facing a single dog whose unwavering presence had disrupted their control entirely. The leader, still clinging to his authority, tried once more to rally his group. "We're not backing down over a dog," he barked, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. He turned toward Angela, pointing accusingly. "You're going to pay for this." He lunged forward, but this time Milo didn't wait for Angela to be in danger. With a sharp bark that echoed down the empty street, Milo surged forward. His leap was precise, his training kicking in like second nature. He didn't go for the man's throat or legs. Instead, he aimed for the leader's outstretched arm. His teeth clamped down firmly, not to maim, but to disarm. The leader screamed, a high-pitched sound that shattered what little composure his companions had left. "Get him off me!" the leader shouted, his free hand flailing as he tried to pull away. But Milo's grip was controlled, his strength undeniable. Angela, calm and steady, gave a single, firm command. "Release!" Milo obeyed instantly, stepping back and returning to her side, his posture still tense, ready to act again if needed. The gang leader stumbled, cradling his arm and glaring at Milo with a mixture of rage and fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, he seemed at a loss. One of the other gang members broke the silence. "We need to go, man," he muttered, his voice shaking. "That dog's not normal." Angela remained silent, her hand steady on Milo's leash. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression was firm, her resolve clear. Milo, standing tall beside her, was all the answer the gang needed. The leader took a shaky step backward, his bravado completely gone. He glanced at Angela, then at Milo, and then at his companions. Without another word, he turned and began walking away, his steps quick and uneven. The others followed, their retreat clumsy and panicked. In seconds, they had disappeared into the shadows from which they had emerged, leaving Angela and Milo alone once again. Angela exhaled slowly, her grip on the leash loosening as the tension drained from her body. Milo, sensing the immediate threat was gone, relaxed slightly, though his eyes still scanned the street. She knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his head. "Good boy," she murmured, her voice soft but steady. The street was quiet again, the chaos of the last few minutes fading into the stillness of the night. But Angela knew this wasn't over. The gang might have retreated for now, but they would remember this encounter. And so would she. As she rose to her feet, Angela looked down at Milo, her loyal companion, her protector. Together they began walking again, their steps purposeful, their bond stronger than ever. This was more than just a walk. It was a reminder of courage, of resilience, and of the unwavering loyalty that had turned a night of fear into a story of triumph. As the gang disappeared into the shadows, Angela stood silently for a moment, her hand still resting on Milo's leash. The adrenaline coursing through her veins began to fade, replaced by the weight of what had just happened. She took a deep breath, her heart still pounding, and glanced down at Milo. He stood alert, scanning their surroundings, as though ready to defend her again if the need arose. But the street had fallen silent. The threat was gone, at least for now. Angela reached into her pocket with steady hands, pulling out her phone. She dialed quickly, her voice calm but firm, as she explained the situation to the dispatcher, The operator assured her that officers were on their way. Angela gave a brief description of the gang members, recounting their actions with clear detail. She didn't let the fear in her voice surface, focusing instead on the facts. Within minutes, the sound of distant sirens broke the quiet of the night. Angela remained in place, her hand on Milo's back as they waited. The flashing lights soon illuminated the street, and 2 patrol cars pulled up beside her. The officers stepped out cautiously, their eyes scanning the area. Angela raised a hand to signal she was the caller, and Milo, sensing her ease, sat calmly by her side. The officers listened attentively as Angela recounted the events, their expressions shifting from concern to disbelief as she described Milo's role in the confrontation. They examined the faint scratches on her arm where the gang leader had grabbed her, taking note of the seriousness of the incident. Angela handed over the discarded purse, now crumpled and empty, as evidence. One officer knelt down to meet Milo at eye level, his stern demeanor softening. "This is the dog you said stopped them?" he asked, glancing up at Angela. She nodded. "His name's Milo. He's a retired service dog. I don't think I'd be standing here if it weren't for him." The officer studied Milo for a moment before reaching out a cautious hand. Milo, sensing no threat, allowed the pat on his head. "Good boy," the officer murmured, shaking his head in amazement. "You've got yourself a real hero here." As the officers radioed in descriptions of the gang members and gathered further details, Angela realized the significance of what had happened. This wasn't just about her safety, it was about the broader implications of community vulnerability and the bravery required to confront it. She answered the officers' questions, determined that this wouldn't simply be another incident that went unnoticed or unresolved. By the next morning, word of the event had spread through the neighborhood. Angela's account of the confrontation and Milo's role in it began to ripple through the community. Neighbors who had known her for years were quick to offer support, some stopping by to check on her and others sharing their own concerns about the growing threats in the area. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as more than just an act of heroism. The headlines captured the public's attention: "Service dog saves owner from gang attack," and "Veteran dog's bravery sparks call for community action." The coverage wasn't just about Milo's actions. It highlighted broader issues of safety, racial profiling, and the need for stronger protections in vulnerable neighborhoods. Angela was hesitant at first to speak publicly, but she realized the story could bring much-needed attention to the challenges her community faced. In interviews, she emphasized Milo's training and his extraordinary loyalty, but she also spoke about the importance of standing together against threats and injustice. "Milo did what he was trained to do," she said, her voice steady. "But no one should feel unsafe walking down their own street. This isn't just my story. It's about all of us." The incident inspired a wave of local activism. Community leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss safety measures, urging residents to report suspicious activity and support one another. A neighborhood watch group was formed, and patrols became a regular presence. Milo, however, became a symbol of courage and resilience far beyond the neighborhood. His story resonated with people across the city, and Angela was inundated with messages of gratitude and admiration. Parents shared stories of how the news had prompted them to have conversations with their children about bravery and compassion. Pet owners reached out to thank Angela for highlighting the incredible potential of service animals. Through it all, Angela remained focused on what mattered most, ensuring that her community felt safer and that Milo received the recognition he deserved. For her, this wasn't about attention or praise. It was about turning a night of fear into a catalyst for change, about using Milo's heroism as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is strength to be found in the bonds we share. And as for Milo, he remained as he always had been, quiet, loyal, and ready to stand by Angela's side no matter what came next. The events of that night served as a stark reminder of the challenges Angela and her community faced, but they also illuminated something far more profound: the courage to act in the face of fear, and the power of unwavering loyalty. Milo's heroic actions not only protected Angela, but ignited a conversation about safety, unity, and resilience. Incidents like these reveal deeper questions about the kind of world we want to live in. How can communities take steps to ensure that no one feels unsafe walking in their own neighborhood? What role can each of us play in creating spaces where kindness and solidarity overpower threats and hostility? If there's one thing Angela's story reminds us, it's that resilience doesn't come from one person or one act. It comes from a collective commitment to stand together, to support one another, and to confront challenges with courage. Milo may have stood alone in that moment, but his actions rippled outward, inspiring a community to come together. And now, we turn to you. How do you think communities can come together to combat hate and create safer spaces for everyone? What steps can neighbors, leaders, and families take to foster unity and address the issues that threaten harmony? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about resilience and heroism, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.